We're joined by Seth Berenzweig of Berenzweig Leonard. His firm specializes in corporate and executive compliance issues. And I know, Seth, you've been following this story very closely alongside us here. And the tapes that we listened to earlier from Danielle, she was specifically talking about getting a tip on stock and then calling Rajaratnam, basically saying, let's short this thing. I know they're going to guide down. And they did. It seems a script written for the prosecution.
Absolutely. I think that the case really couldn't be going a lot better for the prosecution than it is right now. There have been some bumps in the road for the prosecution, but the bottom line is that you have a series of tapes in the summer of 2008 where she and Raj are basically gloating together. They're talking about sharing inside information regarding shorting Akamai. That information is there days before it actually delivers on the bottom line. And then a couple of days later, Raj calls her back and thanks her, and they're literally gloating. She said that she, quote, played him like a finely tuned piano, and that he thanks her for that. And then in a subsequent call, he actually is giving her tips on how to spot trades with a buy and sell to try to have a pattern that conceals insider trading. So the prosecution is really making a lot of headway here, and they're digging a very deep hole for Raj to need to dig out of moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, we did hear this morning sort of maybe a rare setback here for the prosecution, that decision by the judge to exclude tapes of another woman, Rumi Khan, ex-Intel employee who was videotaped faxing confidential documents to Rajaratnam. Judge said they would be damaging and unfair, not serve value. How much of a setback is this?
Well, clearly it's a setback for the government, but candidly, I don't think it's much of a setback because the other information that's been laid out has been very damaging to Raj. The government wants to send a very clear message that the days of Wild West on Wall Street are finished, and they have really been laying down mountains of evidence. That was a setback for the prosecution, and there's no doubt about that. But the bottom line is that the latest tapes with Chiesi demonstrate that they're literally gloating. They're talking about hiding patterns of insider trading. So it's a setback. It's not a huge setback. The prosecution's case will be finished in its case in chief in about a week, and then the defense case will probably take a week. So we're really not very far from having this case go to the jury.
And what's to be lost at this point? I mean, how does the prosecution truly lose the ground that they've gained?
Well, I think that the defense is going to have to try to demonstrate that this was not material inside information, that it was essentially public information. They're going to try to put on, for example, the testimony of an economist as an expert witness to try to demonstrate and try to argue that this was not substantially different than information that was in the public media. I predict that that's going to be defeated. I don't believe the judge will allow that because you don't need an expert witness to talk about something that a juror can resolve as a fact issue. So the defense will try to chip away at the government's case. It's going to be a very serious uphill battle.
I was talking to a trader friend of mine about this case to see, how it was being received, and he said to me the way he's viewing this, and people at his firm, is that this is a trial on whether or not insider trading is going to become legal. If Rajaratnam wins, that's the takeaway. Is that fair?
I think that that's maybe a little bit of a generalization. I agree with the overall substance of that. I think that this really lays out the history of whether certain kinds of alleged insider trading will be able to move forward, whether you can use insider expert networks, insider, trade for pay, being able to have these kinds of lurid discussions, and whether you can have these secret casinos for the privileged few. I do agree with that in the sense that these basic ways of doing business on Wall Street are really on the line right now, and the government's trying to demonstrate that the Wild West days are coming to a close. So I understand what that statement means, and I think that a lot of that is on the line in this particular trial.
But, I mean, it's something as specific as that tape where we heard Danielle calling and saying, my friend told me they're going to guide down. They did. She was right. The tip was accurate. If Rajaratnam gets off, does it make making that own phone call yourself okay?
Well, it will be a devastating blow to the government's attempt to try to have the market be, fair trading as opposed to fixed trading, and it will demonstrate that the government can't really put a case on even when they have these authorized FBI wiretaps. So I agree with you. I think that there's a huge risk here, and the government's being put to the test because there are not many defendants like Raj that have the resources to be able to go toe-to-toe with the government. So this is the government's most critical hour.
Seth, thanks so much.